A young girl was kicked off the ranch for helping a desperate drifter.
Just take it easy now, okay? Everything's gonna be fine.
You're risking much for a stranger, miss. Thank you. I won't forget this.
But the very next day, he returned and bought the entire land. The midnight wind howled through the ranch barn, carrying the sharp scent of blood. 17-year-old Nellie knelt to tend to Silas, a badly beaten drifter. However, Hiram, the unforgiving owner, ordered her to abandon the wounded man to the cold.
Step away from him, Nellie. Get out of the way.
When the young orphan chose mercy over his cruel command, she was banished into the lawless valley with nothing. She had lost her home and her safety for a ragged stranger she would never see again. Or so she thought. What neither Hiram nor Nellie knew was that this desperate drifter hid a staggering secret. And tomorrow, he would buy the whole ranch. The lantern light caught the gleam of blood on the drifter's jaw before the ranch boss raised his rifle. Nellie tightened her grip on the heavy water bucket, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had to choose between the only home she knew and a dying stranger who looked like he had stepped out of a grave. Step away from him, Nellie, Hiram barked. His voice was rough, worn down by years of shouting over the wind. Hiram was a hard man. He owned the Double Bar Ranch, a sprawling stretch of dry, unforgiving land in the valley. The severe drought had made him even harder. His face was lined with worry about failing crops and dying cattle. He kept his rifle pointed steady at the man slumped against the center post. The stranger was in his late 30s. His clothes were covered in trail dust and dried mud. A deep gash crossed his forehead. His left arm hung at a terrible, unnatural angle. He had stumbled onto the property an hour ago, collapsing near the water trough. Nellie did not step away. She was 17 years old, with pale blonde hair tied back in a frayed ribbon. Her hands were small, but they did not shake as she dipped a torn strip of clean cotton into her bucket of water. "He is hurt, Mr. Hiram," Nellie said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the silent barn. "He needs his arm set. He needs water and a clean bandage. If we leave him in the cold, he will not live to see the morning." "That ain't our problem," Amos sneered. Amos was the ranch foreman, a tall, bitter man who stood just behind Hiram. He held up a kerosene lantern, shining the harsh yellow light directly into the stranger's face. "We ain't running a charity. We got 80 head of cattle dying of thirst out there. We ain't wasting clean water, good bandages, and whiskey on a drifter who brought his own trouble to our door." "Amos is right," Hiram said. He lowered the rifle slightly, though his grip remained tight. "Look at him, girl. He's been beaten half to death. Someone out there did that to him. If they come tracking him here, they bring that trouble to my land. I have a ranch to protect. I have men to feed." Nellie understood Hiram's fear. The valley was lawless. Outlaws and desperate men roamed the hills. But she looked down at the stranger. Even beneath the dirt and bruises, there was a quiet dignity about him. He was breathing heavily, his eyes closed, but he did not groan or beg. "I will use my own water," Nellie said, wringing out the cloth. "I will use my own bandages. And I will stay with him out here in the barn so he doesn't take up a bed." "You will do no such thing," Hiram snapped. He took a step forward, his boots heavy on the dirt floor. "I give the orders here. I am telling you to leave him be. Let him sleep off his pain. Come dawn, Amos will load him in the wagon and dump him at the edge of town." Nellie knelt beside the stranger. She pressed the cool, wet cloth gently against the deep cut on his forehead. The man flinched, drawing a sharp breath through his teeth, but he remained still. "Nellie," Hiram shouted. His patience was gone. "Did you not hear me? You are disobeying a direct order." "I heard you, Mr. Hiram," Nellie said. She did not look up. She continued to clean the wound. "But I cannot obey." Amos let out a harsh laugh. "Would you look at that, boss? The little orphan girl thinks she's an angel of mercy." Nellie felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her hands steady. She had lived on the Double Bar Ranch for 4 years, ever since her grandfather passed away. She worked from before the sun came up until long after it went down. She milked the cows. She hauled the firewood. She mended the torn fences. She did it all for a warm bed in the loft and 2 meals a day. She knew how easily Hiram could take it all away, but she also remembered the man who had raised her. Her grandfather was Sergeant Thaddeus. He had served in the Union Army with the 2nd Colorado Cavalry. During a brutal winter ambush at the Battle of Westport, Sergeant Thaddeus had been ordered to retreat. Instead, He stayed behind to guard a wagon full of wounded men. He held the line in the freezing snow, saving 30 lives. A man's life is worth more than a piece of land, Nellie, her grandfather used to tell her by the fire. And it is worth far more than a job. You do what is right, even when the whole world tells you it is wrong. I have worked hard for you, Mr. Hiram, Nellie said softly, tying the bandage around the stranger's head. I have never asked for a day of rest, but I will not let a man die at my feet just because it is convenient. Hiram's face turned deep red. He hated to be defied. He hated it even more when it happened in front of his men. You are making a foolish mistake, girl, Hiram said, his voice dangerously low. If you touch that man again, you are done here. I will not have a rebellious hand on my ranch. The barn was completely silent. Only the howling wind outside could be heard. Nellie looked at the bucket. She looked at the stranger's broken arm. Without a word, she reached for 2 pieces of straight pine wood and a long strip of cloth to make a splint. That's it, Hiram spat. He turned around, disgusted. You're fired. Pack your trunk, Nellie. You have until sunrise to get off my property. Boss, it's a 2-day walk to town, Amos pointed out, though a cruel smile played on his lips. Then she had better start walking early, Hiram said coldly. He looked back at Nellie one last time. You threw away a good life for a ghost, girl. I hope he was worth it. Hiram and Amos walked out of the barn. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them, leaving Nellie alone with the stranger and the single lantern Amos had left on the barrel. Nellie let out a long, shaky breath. Her hands finally began to tremble. She had just lost everything. She had no money. She had no family. She had nowhere to go. She felt a tear escape her eye and slide down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. She turned her attention back to the stranger. This is going to hurt, she whispered to him. She positioned the pine boards around his broken arm. I know. The voice was deep, raspy, and incredibly calm. Nellie gasped and leaned back. The stranger's eyes were open. They were a piercing, clear blue. Despite his terrible injuries, his gaze was sharp and entirely focused. He had been awake. He had heard everything. You shouldn't have done that, the man said. It cost him effort to speak, but his voice was steady. He took your home. He took my job, Nellie corrected him, finding her courage. My home is wherever I am standing. Hold still. She pulled the cloth tight, binding the splint. The man closed his eyes and clenched his jaw, but he did not make a sound. When she finished, she handed him a tin cup of fresh water. He drank it slowly. He looked at her hands, raw and blistered from years of hard labor, and then looked at her face. What is your name? He asked quietly. Nellie, she answered. And yours? Silas, he said. He rested his head back against the hay. You have a brave heart, Nellie. Braver than most men I have met. Bravery didn't pay for my supper, she said, offering a small, sad smile. You need to sleep, Silas. I will keep watch. Tomorrow, I have a long walk ahead of me. Where will you go? Silas asked. Town, I suppose. I can sew. I can cook. Someone will need a hand. Silas watched her for a long moment. There was an intelligence in his eyes that did not match the rags he wore. He noticed everything. He noticed the way she tied the knots. He noticed the pride in her posture. Your grandfather, Silas said softly. You mentioned him to the ranch boss. Who was he? Sergeant Thaddeus, Nellie said. Just saying his name made her feel a little warmer in the cold barn. He was a good man. A strange shadow passed over Silas's face. He looked away, staring into the dark corners of the barn. He remained silent for so long that Nellie thought he had fallen asleep. But then, he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper over the wind. Get some rest, Nellie. The morning will bring more changes than you know. Dawn bled over the dry valley, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. Nellie awoke with a stiff neck and cold hands. She pushed herself up from the rough barn floor and looked toward the center post. The hay was flattened. A single blood-stained rag lay on the dirt. Silas was gone. A quiet ache settled in her chest. She had hoped, perhaps foolishly, to say goodbye. She had risked everything for a man who had vanished into the night like smoke. But as she stood up and brushed the straw from her skirt, she felt no regret. Her grandfather would have been proud. That was enough. Nellie climbed the creaking wooden ladder to the loft. Her packing took less than 5 minutes. She owned very little. She folded 2 patched cotton dresses, a pair of worn leather boots, and a heavy wool blanket. Finally, she picked up her most prized possession, a small, tarnished silver locket. It held a faded tintype photograph of Sergeant Thaddeus in his Union uniform. She snapped the locket shut and placed it safely in her pocket. She walked out into the crisp morning air, carrying her canvas bag. Hiram was standing on the porch of the main house. He held a cup of steaming coffee. Amos stood beside him, leaning against the railing with a lazy, mocking grin. "I see the drifter left you behind," Hiram called out. His voice was loud in the quiet morning. "Ran off like a frightened dog. I told you, girl. You threw your life away for nothing." Nellie did not stop walking. She did not look at them. "Hold on a minute," Amos said. He stepped off the porch and walked into her path. He blocked the wooden gate leading out to the main trail. "You owe us for the water and the bandages you wasted last night." Nellie tightened her grip on her bag. "I used my own bandages. And water belongs to the earth, Amos. Not to you." "Big words for a little orphan," Amos sneered. He reached out and grabbed the strap of her bag. "Let's see what you're trying to steal from the double bar." "Let go," Nellie said firmly. She yanked the bag back, but Amos was stronger. "Let her pass, Amos," Hiram shouted from the porch. He sounded irritated, not out of kindness, but out of a desire to be done with her. "She has nothing worth taking. Just get her off my land." Amos let go of the bag, but he leaned in close. His breath smelled of stale tobacco. "It's a long walk to town, Nellie. Outlaws in the hills. Coyotes in the brush. You better watch your back." Nellie lifted her chin. "I am not afraid of the trail, Amos. And I am not afraid of you." She pushed past him, opening the heavy wooden gate and stepping onto the dusty road. She did not look back. The road to the town of Red Creek was a winding trail of baked yellow dirt. By noon, the sun was a punishing fire in the sky. The dry chaparral bushes offered no shade. The valley was silent, save for the crunch of Nellie's boots and the distant cry of a hawk. Nellie's throat felt like sandpaper. She had no canteen. Hiram had refused to let her take one. She walked with her head down, focusing on placing one foot in front of the other. She thought of her grandfather to pass the time. Sergeant Thaddeus had taught her how to read using an old leather-bound Bible. He taught her how to patch a roof and how to calm a frightened horse. He had been a man of immense integrity. When the fever took him 4 years ago, Nellie had felt entirely unmoored. Working at the Double Bar Ranch had been a way to survive, but it had never been a home. "A home is built on respect," Nellie, her grandfather, had said. "A house built on fear is just a prison." She was free now. The thought brought a small burst of energy to her tired legs. She was broke and thirsty, but she was free. Suddenly, a cloud of dust rose on the trail ahead of her. Nellie stopped. She squinted against the bright sun. 2 riders were galloping toward her at a dangerous speed. As they drew closer, her heart sank. It was Amos, riding alongside another ranch hand named Jeb. They pulled their horses to a halt, blocking the narrow trail. Their horses kicked up dry dirt, forcing Nellie to cough and cover her face. Well, Amos said. He tipped his hat back, revealing a cruel smile. "Look who we found. Looks like you could use a ride, Nellie." "I am fine walking," Nellie said. She kept her voice steady, though fear began to crawl up her spine. She stepped to the side, trying to walk around them. Jeb moved his horse to block her again. "Boss sent us," Jeb said, looking a little uneasy but following Amos's lead. "Said you might have taken something from the lockbox in the office before you left." "That is a lie," Nellie said sharply. "I have never set foot in Hiram's office. I took exactly what belonged to me. Nothing more." Amos dismounted. He unhooked a coiled leather whip from his saddle. He didn't intend to use it, but he liked the fear it inspired. "Boss says we need to search your bag. And your pockets. Just to be sure. You just want the silver locket my grandfather gave me," Nellie realized. Her voice shook with sudden, fierce anger. "You saw it in the barn once. You are a thief, Amos. And a coward." Amos's face darkened. The playful mockery vanished, replaced by genuine malice. "Give me the bag, girl, or I will leave you out here with broken legs to match that drifter's arm." He lunged forward and snatched the canvas bag from her hands. Nellie fought back. She kicked his shin hard. Amos cursed and backhanded her across the face. The blow sent Nellie stumbling into the dry brush. She tasted blood on her lip. Amos dumped the contents of her bag onto the dirt. The folded dresses, the blanket, the boots. He kicked them aside, looking for coins. "Where is it?" Amos growled, marching toward her. Nellie scrambled backward. her hand instinctively protecting the pocket that held her locket. She braced herself for the worst. She had no weapon. She was completely alone. A loud, sharp crack echoed through the valley. It was not a whip. It was the unmistakable sound of a Winchester rifle firing a warning shot into the sky. Amos froze. Jeb's horse whinnied in panic, dancing nervously in the dirt. Down the trail, coming from the direction of Red Creek, a group of riders approached. There were 6 of them. They rode massive, well-fed Morgan horses. The men wore tailored dark coats and carried themselves with military discipline. At the center of the group rode a man on a magnificent black stallion. Nellie blinked, her vision blurred by dust and the stinging in her cheek. As the riders closed the distance, her breath caught in her throat. The man in the center was Silas, but he was no longer a drifter. He was clean-shaven, his dark hair neatly combed back. The dirt and grime were gone. He wore a crisp white shirt, a tailored black vest, and a long, expensive riding coat. His left arm was wrapped in a pristine white sling, secured tightly against his chest. He sat tall in the saddle, emanating an aura of absolute authority and wealth. "Drop the bag, Amos," Silas commanded. His deep, raspy voice was the same, but it now carried the weight of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Amos stared in pure shock. His hands trembled. You're the tramp from the barn. And you are a dead man if you take another step toward her," Silas said. 2 of the men riding with Silas unholstered their revolvers. They aimed directly at Amos and Jeb. The metallic clicks of the hammers being pulled back echoed loudly in the quiet heat. Jeb immediately raised his hands. "I want no part of this, mister. I was just following orders." Amos slowly backed away from Nellie, his face completely pale. He dropped the empty canvas bag in the dirt. Silas dismounted gracefully, despite his injured arm. He did not look at Amos. He walked straight to Nellie and offered her his right hand. Nellie looked at his clean, manicured hand, and then up into his clear blue eyes. She took his hand. He pulled her gently to her feet. "Are you badly hurt?" Silas asked, his voice softening entirely. He noticed the blood on her lip, and a cold fury flashed in his eyes before he suppressed it. "I am fine," Nellie whispered, still trying to comprehend what she was seeing. "Silas, who are you?" Before Silas could answer, one of the armed men stepped forward. "This is Mr. Silas Caldwell, owner of the Pacific Union Railroad line and the largest cattle company in this territory." Nellie gasped. Silas Caldwell. The name was famous even on the isolated Double Bar Ranch. He was a tycoon, a man who built towns and bought out entire valleys. "Mr. Caldwell," Amos stammered, his voice breaking. He fell to his knees in the dirt, all his previous cruelty vanishing into pathetic terror. "I didn't know. Sir, I swear to God, I didn't know it was you." Silas finally turned to look at Amos. His expression was like granite. "You did not know my name, Amos." "That is true," Silas said coldly. "But you knew I was a human being. You knew I was bleeding. You knew I was in pain. And you chose to treat me like garbage. You chose to threaten a young girl because she showed me the mercy you lack." Silas turned to his men. "Bind their hands. Tie them to the back of the wagon when it arrives. They will be turned over to the federal marshal in Red Creek for assault and attempted robbery." "Please," Amos begged, but the armed guards were already hauling him to his feet, ignoring his cries. Silas turned his attention back to Nellie. He knelt down in the dirt, completely unbothered by the dust ruining his expensive trousers. He began picking up her scattered belongings, folding her patched dresses with his one good hand. "You don't have to do that," Nellie said, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "It is the least I can do," Silas said quietly. He stood up and handed her the bag. "I owe you an apology, Nellie. I left before dawn to reach my men in Red Creek. I knew Hiram would cast you out, but I miscalculated how quickly he would do it. I should have stayed to protect you." "Why were you dressed like a drifter?" Nellie asked, clutching her bag to her chest. "Why were you hurt?" Silas sighed, looking out toward the distant hills where the Double Bar Ranch sat. "Hiram owes my bank a vast sum of money," Silas explained. "More importantly, my cattle have been disappearing near his property borders. I suspected Hiram was running a rustling operation to pay off his debts, but I needed proof. I dressed as a drifter to scout his land unseen." Silas's jaw tightened. "I found his holding pens hidden in the canyons, but his men caught me. They didn't know who I was. They beat me and left me for dead. I managed to crawl to the ranch, hoping to find one decent soul. He looked at Nellie with profound respect. I found you. Nellie processed the information. Her entire world was shifting rapidly. Hiram is a cattle thief. He will lose the ranch. He already has, Silas said. My lawyers finalized the foreclosure this morning in town. As of an hour ago, I own the Double Bar Ranch. Nellie stared at him in disbelief. The man she had saved with a bucket of water and a ripped cloth now owned the very land she had been exiled from. Silas pointed toward a grand, enclosed carriage cresting the hill behind his men. My carriage is coming, Silas said. It will take you to Red Creek. I have a room waiting for you at the best hotel. You will have hot food, a bath, and whatever else you need. Nellie looked at the approaching carriage, gleaming in the sun. It represented comfort. It represented safety. But she shook her head slowly. No. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, Nellie said firmly. Silas looked surprised. No, I don't accept charity, Nellie said, standing perfectly straight. I am a worker. I saved your life because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted a reward. I will walk to town and find a job. I can take care of myself. Silas studied her face. He saw the fierce independence, the unyielding pride. He smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. You are exactly like him, Silas murmured. Like who? Nellie asked. Silas reached into his vest pocket. He pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden pipe. Nellie recognized it instantly. It was a Union Army issue pipe, the exact kind her grandfather used to smoke. Sergeant Thaddeus, Silas said softly. The man who saved my father's life. Nellie stared at the wooden pipe in Silas's hand. The polished oak was worn smooth from years of use. She reached into her pocket, her fingers brushing against the cold silver of her locket. Her mind raced, trying to bridge the gap between her humble grandfather and this powerful millionaire. My father was Private John Caldwell, Silas explained, his voice softening. The rough wind of the valley seemed to quiet down, allowing his words to carry a profound weight. He was 19 years old at the Battle of Westport. He was shot in the shoulder. He was one of the men in that wagon, freezing in the snow, waiting to die. Silas took a step closer. The armed guards gave them space, sensing the private nature of the moment. The Union Army called for a full retreat, Silas continued. They abandoned the wounded. But your grandfather refused to leave them. He stood in the snow for 12 hours. He fought off 3 Confederate patrols. He kept a fire burning. And when my father cried out from the terrible pain of his wound, Sergeant Thaddeus gave him this pipe to bite down on. Tears welled in Nellie's eyes. She had heard the story of the snowy ambush many times by the hearth, but her grandfather had never boasted. He had simply said he did what any decent soldier would do. My father survived because of him, Silas said. He went on to build a business, to marry, to have a family. I exist because of Thaddeus. My father kept this pipe on his desk until the day he died. He always told me to find the sergeant and repay the debt. Silas looked down at the dusty road. By the time I had the resources to track him down, I learned he had passed away. I learned he left behind a granddaughter who was working as a hired hand on the Double Bar Ranch. That is why I came to this valley, Nellie. I came looking for you. Nellie felt a lump form in her throat. For 4 years, she had felt completely forgotten by the world. She had worked until her bones ached, believing she was entirely alone. Hiram owed me money, yes, Silas said, his eyes hardening as he looked toward the distant ranch. But when I learned how he treated his workers, how he treated you, I decided to take a closer look at his operation. I wanted to see the measure of the man holding your leash. Silas gently placed the wooden pipe into Nellie's open palm. You do not accept charity, Nellie. I respect that, Silas said. But this is not charity. This is an inheritance. A debt paid in full to the bravest man my family ever knew. Nellie looked at the pipe, then at Silas. I don't understand. The Double Bar Ranch no longer belongs to Hiram, Silas stated clearly. I bought the deed this morning, and I am signing it over to you. Nellie's breath caught. Me? I cannot own a ranch. I am 17. I have no money for seed, no men to ride the fences. You have something far more valuable, Silas countered gently. You know the land. You know the cattle. Most importantly, you know how to treat people. A ranch cannot survive without water, Nellie, but it will surely rot without integrity. I will provide the initial capital to hire honest men. You will run it. We will be partners. For the first time since her grandfather died, Nellie felt the heavy, suffocating weight of fear lift from her chest. She looked at the sprawling valley. It was dry and harsh, but it was beautiful. It was the only home she knew, and now it could truly be hers. "Okay," Nellie whispered, a single tear spilling over her eyelashes. "Okay, Mr. Caldwell. Call me Silas," he smiled. "Now, I believe we have an eviction to carry out." The carriage ride back to the ranch was swift. The plush velvet seats were a sharp contrast to the rough wagon beds Nellie was used to. Silas sat across from her, reviewing a stack of legal documents with his one good hand. When the carriage pulled through the wooden gates of the Double Bar Ranch, the sun was beginning its descent, casting long, golden shadows across the dry earth. Hiram was standing on the porch of the main house. Several large trunks were piled around him. He looked furious, barking orders at the few remaining ranch hands. He had received the telegram from town that his debts had been called in and the bank had seized the property. When the grand carriage stopped in front of the house, Hiram straightened his jacket. He assumed a bank representative had arrived to take inventory. The carriage door opened. Silas stepped out first. Hiram's face went completely blank. He stared at the tailored coat, the pristine sling, and the unmistakable, sharp blue eyes of the man he had left to die in the barn. "You," Hiram breathed out, his voice trembling. "Good afternoon, Hiram," Silas said, his voice ringing with cold authority. "I hope your packing is coming along swiftly." Hiram took a step back, his eyes darting to the armed guards riding behind the carriage. Panic set in. You're the drifter." But the telegram said Silas Caldwell bought the deed. "I am Silas Caldwell," he replied. Hiram gripped the porch railing to steady himself. The color drained from his face as the realization hit him. He had pointed a rifle at the most powerful man in the territory. He had denied him water. "Mr. Caldwell, I can explain," Hiram stammered, stepping down from the porch. "The rustling, it was a mistake. Times were hard. The drought." "I have no interest in your excuses," Silas cut him off. "You poisoned this land with your greed. You will leave this valley tonight. If you ever set foot in Red Creek again, my men will see you arrested." Hiram swallowed hard, defeated. He nodded slowly. "The ranch is yours, Mr. Caldwell. I will be gone in an hour." "The ranch is not mine," Silas corrected him. He turned toward the carriage and held out his hand. Nellie stepped out into the golden sunlight. She held her head high. Her dress was still patched, and her boots were still worn, but her posture was unyielding. Hiram's eyes widened in disbelief. "Nellie? What is the meaning of this?" "Miss Nellie is the new owner of the Double Bar Ranch," Silas announced so every hand in the yard could hear. "She gives the orders now. Anyone who wishes to stay and work for an honest wage will answer to her. Anyone who prefers Hiram's methods can follow him down the trail." The ranch hands exchanged stunned looks, but none of them moved to join Hiram. They had all seen how hard Nellie worked. They knew she was fair. Hiram stared at the young girl he had bullied, belittled, and cast out into the wilderness. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, or perhaps to hurl one last insult. But as he looked into Nellie's steady eyes, he found no anger. He found only pity. "You have an hour, Hiram," Nellie said quietly. Her voice did not shake. "Leave the horses that belong to the ranch. Take only what is yours." Hiram lowered his head. He walked past her in silence, a broken man carrying the weight of his own cruelty. A month later, the first rains finally came to the valley. The dry earth drank the water eagerly. The brown chaparral began to turn a vibrant, hopeful green. Nellie stood on the porch of the main house, holding a hot cup of coffee. The house had been scrubbed clean. The shadows of Hiram's reign were gone. In the yard, honest men were repairing the fences, singing as they worked. The cattle were grazing in the lower pastures. Silas stood beside her. He had stayed at the ranch for a few weeks to ensure the transition was smooth, working through ledgers and contracts with his good hand while the other healed. Today his carriage was packed. He was returning to the city. "The herd is looking stronger," Silas noted, looking out over the property. "You have done well, Nellie. The men respect you." "They respect hard work," Nellie replied softly. "And they respect fairness. I learned that from you. And from my grandfather." Silas turned to her. "I am leaving you the legal documents. The bank will not trouble you. But if you ever need anything, seed, money, or just a friend to talk to, you send a telegram." "I will," Nellie promised. Silas tipped his hat, a gesture of profound respect. He walked down the porch steps and climbed into his carriage. As the driver flicked the reins and the horses began to trot down the trail, Silas looked back through the window. He saw a young woman standing tall on her land. She was no longer a frightened orphan or an overworked hand. She was a leader. Nellie reached into her pocket and pulled out the tarnished silver locket. She opened it and looked at the faded photograph of Sergeant Thaddeus. Next to it, she had placed the small wooden pipe. Wealth is not measured by the acreage you own, nor by the coins in your pocket. True wealth is built in the quiet moments of mercy, when no one is watching, and when kindness costs you everything. Nellie closed the locket and took a deep breath of the rain-washed air. The storm had passed. The drought was over. She turned and walked back inside her home, leaving the door wide open behind her to let in the light. And that is where we'll leave Nellie and Silas on the Double Bar Ranch today. Whenever I share these Western tales of quiet courage, I hope they give you a chance to step out of the everyday and just drift for a bit. I'd love to know what you were doing while listening. Maybe sitting on the porch, sipping tea, or settling in for a calm evening. Drop a line in the comments. I read them all, and I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Liking and subscribing makes a huge difference, so feel free to share your feedback below. Thank you for spending this time with me.